Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Good evening and good afternoon. First of all, I would like to apologize for the delay for starting this webinar. We just had quite a number of technical problems, but now we're all set to get started. Welcome to this high-level panel organized by the World Bank, Global Road Safety. We're organizing this webinar in the context of the 6th UN Road Safety Week, an important week. The title of this Road Safety Week is called Streets for Life, Saving Lives on the Road Through Speeds. Under the UN Global Road Safety Week, actually, GRSF has already been actively promoting this and already delivered the speed management webinar on April 26th. And today we have this high-level panel, and tomorrow we'll have a low-speed, the launch of the low-speed zone guide event. These interactive events will provide information and technical sessions on evidence-based road safety knowledge to help manage speeds through infrastructure interventions, effective enforcement, well-informed leadership, targeted awareness measures, and vehicle technology. This is a high time to raise our collective voice against speeding and showing global leadership and commitment. These activities will mark an important milestone in the roadmap towards establishing the second decade of road action in road safety. That's 2021 to 2030. As you're aware, it's a very high cost for road traffic injuries. Each year, we lose about 1.3 million people and around 50 million people injured, mostly in low and middle-income countries. Speed is a key contributor to crash factor of over 650,000 lives annually. Hence, the 6th UN Global Road Safety Week rightly focuses on this issue and brings a global spotlight for safer roads. We're very pleased to be at the forefront of these initiatives. We're very happy to be partnering with a number of global organizations, and GRSF is taking leadership at this front. Today, we have very amazing and distinguished speakers and panelists who are playing a critical role across the world to make progress in road safety agenda. Let me introduce these distinguished panelists in the order they come in this program. First, I'm delighted to introduce Pablo Faisal-Ber, our Acting Vice President and Director of Strategy for Infrastructure. Pablo will give the opening remarks. Thank you, Pablo, first of all, for being part of the series of events we've been having under the UN Global Road Safety Week, and really appreciate your leadership and support for road safety at the bank. We have short sessions from World Bank colleagues on the GRSF road and speed management initiatives, including successes that are. This presentation is going to be presented by Radek Zabisky and Alina Burlaku, sorry, Alina. Senior Transport Specialist and the Program Manager for GRSF. I was also Senior Transport Specialist and Program Manager for the Bloomberg Philanthropic Initiatives for Global Road Safety Program. After this short presentations, we'll move to the high-level panel discussion. We're delighted to have Mr. Etienne Krug from the World Health Organization. He's the Director for the Department of the Social Development and Health. And then we are honored also to have Mr. John Todd, the UN Special Envoy for Road Safety and FIA President. He has been at the forefront of this initiative in many forums. Many of you, sure you're aware of the great work Mr. Todd has been doing on this aspect. We're also delighted to have Ms. Mamta Murthy, our Vice President for Human Development at the World Bank, emphasizing, as she will speak later, about the importance of human development and the linkages between road safety and human capital and human development in general. We also have Susanna Zamartu. She's the Director General for International Road Federation, an important stakeholder that's promoting safe roads and promoting public-private partnership in this regard, and we will hear from Susanna as well. Last but not least is Mr. Hart Schaefer, our Vice President for the South Asia region, World Bank, who's been promoting road safety in South Asia region and globally. We're very delighted to have you, Hart, in this program. I thank you all of the panelists. Please join me in thanking the panelists for joining us today. I'm sure the audience will get some insightful guidance on how to manage speed, how to choose and save lives on the road. Now I would like to request Pablo to make his opening remarks, which will be followed by the presentation from Radek and Alina. Pablo, over to you, please.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much to you. Thank you to our distinguished guests. We're very lucky to have two World Bank vice presidents at this event, as well as distinguished representatives from the UN, the International Road Federation, the World Health Organization. We're really lucky to have all of you today, and we hope that this will be a very fruitful debate that will be very informative to all the participants. I am also delighted to do this in the context of this year UN Global Road Safety Week, which, as we know, is themed Streets for Life, Love 30. Under this year's Global Road Safety Week, the World Bank Road Safety Facility is promoting a series of knowledge products that aim to advocate and call for action on speed management in our streets worldwide. These initiatives will mark an important milestone towards establishing the second decade of action in road safety, 2021-2030. Interactive events such as the one we're holding here today aim at sharing and exchanging evidence-based knowledge on what is proven to work in road safety interventions. Specifically, our focus today is on interventions that help manage speeds through infrastructure investments, effective enforcement, well-informed leadership, targeted awareness measures, and new vehicle technology. The focus on speed management is related first to the fact that this year, the UN Global Road Safety Week advocates for the implementation of speed management strategies. This is especially important in places where we have vulnerable road users present and where there is clear evidence that a speed of 30 kilometers per hour is required to produce safe outcomes for these road users. As we will hear today, vehicle speeds play a significant role in road safety outcomes, leading to increased deaths and serious injuries every year. Speed, and this is very important, also plays an important role in other societal developments, such as local air pollution, global greenhouse gas emissions, noise pollution, and active travel promotion. All these issues have important links to broader health and development outcomes. It is thus essential to highlight these linkages between speed, safety, air pollution, and human capital development. This is because recognizing these interconnections can lead to increased awareness of the synergies at hand and can help bring about greater policy action and also ultimately increase benefits for the population if these issues are considered together. As we will discuss in a few minutes, there are cost-effective solutions that we can use to better manage speeds, to both improve road users' safety and to also achieve these broader societal outcomes. The World Bank has been implementing many of these solutions as part of our projects. As we move into this new decade of action, we hope that this event helps bring global focus to the need for practical approaches to engage governments and the private sector to first invest in road safety, but at the same time harness data to inform implementation and calibration of our interventions. And finally, to ensure that synergies with other development agendas, especially the one related to the human development issues, are well taken into account. As you know, road safety has been an important priority for the World Bank. We have aimed at playing a global leadership role in this space through the activities of the Global Road Safety Facility that is now more than 15 years old. As an example of our latest work in this area, we recently launched a new Speed Management Hub website that contains information and resources on this topic. Our Global Road Safety Facility is also leading international efforts to produce a new global guide on the effective management of speed. This guide will complement other global resources by providing up-to-date information on the following. First, the importance of effective speed management in terms of safety, but also, as we mentioned, broader societal benefits. Second, on ways to set effective speed limits for different road environments. And finally, on methods to support these speed limits through the improvement of infrastructure, but also the design and enforcement of policies of various natures. Let me take this opportunity to invite everyone to our event tomorrow mentioned by Ben earlier. This event tomorrow, May 20, will be about empowering communities to manage speed. At this event, we will officially launch another product, the Low Speed Zone Guide, which has been produced jointly between the World Bank, GRSF, and WRI. This guide will aim at helping communities and decision makers to plan, design, and implement effective speed-related interventions, specifically in built-up areas. This low speed zone guide will complement the global speed management guide which we plan to launch later this year, but which we will make available tomorrow at the webinar for a preview. Thank you once again to our guests and to all the participants in today's event. I really look forward to hearing today's presentation and having a very productive panel discussion. Thank you very much, and back to you, Ben.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pablo, for that great opening remarks and setting the context for discussion today. So now we will just move straight to the session by Radek and Anila. Over to you guys in making the point. Thank you. Anila, you have it, Radek?
Radek, we cannot hear you. So it seems that my colleague Radek, can you hear us now? I think Radek might have some connection problems. So I'll start with the presentation and finally ask Radek to step in whenever he has a good connection. So good morning, afternoon, or evening to all distinguished guests and participants connecting from all around the world. My name is Alina Burlacu, and together with my colleague Radek Chapsky, we were supposed together to deliver the presentation and address you briefly today. As most of you know, speeding is estimated to be a direct cause or major contributor to around 50% of global road deaths, which translates into 650,000 lives annually. And that is why the World Bank and the Global Road Safety Facility are particularly committed to tackle this challenge. And this event, organized in the context of the speed management focused UN Global Road Safety Week, is part of our global quest for safe speeds. But before we provide some more details on our speed-focused actions, let me briefly introduce you our engagements. So first and foremost, we are a global road safety fund hosted by the World Bank since 2006. Thanks to generosity of our donors, we are all recognized. At the bottom of the slide, we managed to attract almost 74 million United States dollars, USD, for a very diverse set of research, advisory, and capacity building projects. But at the same time, But at the same time, we are a global knowledge and expertise center which provided support to over 80 developing countries. We are very grateful to all our donors for their ongoing support and obviously hope to continue and expand our collaboration to achieve ambitious goals of the current UN Decade of Action in Road Safety. Thanks to GRSF-funded direct support to the developing countries and guidance to the World Bank-funded investment projects, thousands of lives have been and will be saved in the next decades, but there is still a long way to go in cooperation with our global regional partners, such as WHO, MDBs, UN partners, NGOs, research institutions, and academia. We are also glad that more than half of GRSF funding have gone to initiatives implemented by these partners. Our attention is focused on low and middle-income countries, and our main types of engagements range from promoting strong regional and country-level road safety leadership and influencing decision-makers, through advising and promoting proven result-focused safety interventions among developing countries' professionals, to funding external partners in the research and knowledge exchange activities in low and middle-income countries. In parallel, GRSF provides regular support to World Bank teams in assuring safe solutions through World Bank loan-funded projects. And thanks to our donors, along with our support to the Bloomberg Philanthropies Initiative for Global Road Safety and our Multi-Donor Trust Fund grant program, we are advancing our own research activities which focus on the most efficient ways of addressing key road safety challenges of developing countries, including in speed management. In recognition of our efficient delivery of diverse road safety activities, the GRSF has won 3 prestigious Prince Michael Awards in 2020, which is a very nice and re-energizing surprise. So I will also, before I go into more details on the Speed Management Hub, I would just like to briefly underline that speed management was and is among top priority areas for GRSF activities. And let me just briefly mention a few of the most recent examples. We've been working our research on infrastructure related speed management measures is the priority theme of this year GRSF Call for Proposal, which is advancing now, and successful grants to be confirmed in June. Also, speed is among the driving factors influencing economic analysis of World Bank projects. And 2 of the GRSF recent practical guides share international good practices regarding effective speed management measures, with one of them being the Guide for Road Safety Interventions, evidence of what works and what doesn't work, and also the Guide for Determining Readiness for Speed Cameras and Other Automated Speed Enforcement Systems, prepared jointly with our partners, the Global Road Safety Partnership, or GRSP. And another GRSF managed program is the Bloomberg Philanthropies Initiative for Global Road Safety, or also called BIG-RS, which spreads over a 6 years period and aims saving 600,000 lives and prevent up to 22 million injuries. World Bank GRSF is one of the Safer Streets and Safer Mobility partners, and also the host of the Speed Management Hub of the initiative, which was officially launched a couple of months ago. Some key engagements that GRSF has under the Speed Management Hub include provision of speed-related technical expertise, and also preparation and publication of various speed-related studies, success stories, and guides, together with knowledge sharing and dissemination. One of the main outputs of the Speed Management Hub is a dedicated online platform aiming to be a one-stop shop in terms of speed-related knowledge. This platform provides evidence-based road safety knowledge to help manage speed through infrastructure intervention, effective enforcement, targeted awareness measures, and also vehicle technology. The platform also allows the wide dissemination of speed-related frequently asked questions and myths, together with a rich library, latest news, and best practices on this topic. And then, although we have several myths busted on our hub platform, I'd like here to mention the #1 myth related to speed, which is that speed isn't actually a major cause of road crashes, or that changing my speed won't have any impact on safety. The reason why this is a myth is very simple, as the relationship between speed and crash outcome has been captured in various models, most notably Nielsen's power model that you can see on the screen, and this shows that a 1% increase in average speed results in approximately 4% increase in fatal crash frequency. Basically, This model shows how decreasing average speed by only a few kilometers per hour can significantly reduce the risk and severity of crashes. And maybe this doesn't seem like much, but in practice, if we reduce the speed by 2%, meaning, for example, in urban areas from 50 to 49 kilometers per hour, and similar changes on other roads globally, we would be saving over 100,000 lives from road crashes each and every year. Imagine the impact if we would go for a 10% reduction. We would be preventing over 500,000 lives lost in road crashes. Even more than this, adopting 30 km per hour speed limit in cities will make Vision Zero reality and have no more lives lost in road crashes, as Oslo, Norway's capital, achieved in 2019. But for this, political commitment and continuation of programs across political parties are crucial, together with community support. And one good example in this regard is Bogota. Bogota is a success story that exemplifies the power of reducing speed limits. In 2017, the World Bank, GRSF, IRAP, and local partners assessed almost 200 kilometers of roads across the city and used the data to perform a series of scenario tests to see what the impact of changing speeds would be. This helped build the evidence to support a move to reduce and strictly enforce speed limits. Later in 2018, the city was convinced to reduce and actively enforce speed limits from 60 to 50 km per hour on 5 major corridors, which together accounted for a quarter of the city's total road deaths. And the effect was dramatic. According to the early reporting, month-on-month deaths dropped by 34%. The success in these corridors encouraged the city to later roll out a 50 km per hour speed limit in all arterial roads in the city. So this was a really good place to start from and build on the case that lower speeds save lives. I should also add here that the city has done a lot of other good work, including on bicycle lanes and pedestrian crossings at schools. Bloomberg Philanthropies, through their initiative, supported the transition between administrations and political parties, making sure these lower speed limits not only stay in place, but are also adopted on other streets. And the GRSF has more upcoming resources to support enhanced speed management. We have a low speed zone guide and the global speed management guide that Pablo was just mentioning, both prepared together with the World Resources Institute, and we hope you can join the interactive event tomorrow and learn more about them. We are also working on a road safety calculator, which is a planning level tool to inform decision makers on road safety improvements and investments, including 5 interventions of speed, which you can see on your screen. And last but not least, a research analysis on the economics and benefits of speed management is ongoing, aiming to improve our understanding of the wider socioeconomic gains that can be obtained in the context of low and middle income countries through sound speed management. So I will end my presentation here, and I will invite you to check our website and reach out to us for any questions you might have related to speed or road safety in general. Thank you. Ben, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alina, for the presentation and laying out what the work being done in GRS and Bloomberg Philanthropies. It's also great that you had some evidence of reducing speed and moving to 30 kilometers per hour speed zone. So I also like, I think, that what you said about the need for political commitment and community participation. So, well, with us today, we have important policymakers and leaders in their sphere. So let's have this discussion, how we can actually galvanize community awareness, ownership, and political commitment for really reducing speed on our roads and thereby saving lives. Let me now welcome our distinguished panelists to our virtual table. As a reminder, we have Mr. Etienne Krug from WHO, John Todd from the UN Special Envoy for Road Safety, Mamta Murthy, our Vice President for Human Development, Susanna Zamataro, IRF Director General, and Hart Schaefer, Vice President for South Asia region in the World Bank. So we'll have a series of questions. I'm going to give a few questions and I'll let the panelists answer. So the topics we'll discuss today are around the decade of action for road safety, on rebuilding momentum in the new COVID world, and linking development agenda and attaining synergies, especially with human development. And if we have time, we will also discuss about new technology and knowledge for moving forward. So let's start then on this question on the decade of action for road safety. So let me start with Mr. Krug, who has been leading efforts on the preparation of the new decade of action for road safety. So, Mr. Krug, we have just finished the first decade of action for road safety, and we're now entering a new decade of action. Can you tell us a little bit on what this have been, the key challenge for the first decade of action, and what are the main lessons that we have learned from this decade of action that could be applied for the new decade of action? Mr. Krug.
Thanks so much. And first of all, happy UN Global Road Safety Week to all of you. And thanks to our colleagues in the World Bank for organizing this important discussion on road safety in general, on speed in particular, and on this Law of 30 concept of reducing speed in urban areas. Yes, indeed, we just finished the first decade of action, and we've seen quite big differences in what has been achieved in some countries versus others. We've seen important decreases in road traffic deaths in Russia, in Brazil, in the European Union, ranging from 20% to all the way to 50%. So that's a lot of success in just 10 years, showing that it's possible. And the key to these achievements really has been political will. A decision at the highest level of government, at the national or even international level in the EU, to really address this issue and have substantial reductions. And then, of course, they put in place the things that we know are needed, good laws and enforcement, including on speed, good infrastructure, vehicles, trauma care, solid data collection, etc. But this issue of political will at the highest level has been key. We've seen in other countries that this political will wasn't there, and in most low-income countries and low and middle-income countries, we have still seen an increase in the number of deaths, showing that more efforts are needed. So at the beginning of this decade, we are quite convinced that we can achieve the proposed reduction of 50% of deaths around the world if we put in place those things that we know work. If we add to that some innovation, which includes a modal shift, moving away from a car-based transportation system to one that is more healthy, walking, cycling, and public transport should get a much bigger space in our transportation system. But to do that, we need every head of state, every head of government to take the decision that enough is enough, that we don't want to continue to pay this huge price for our mobility. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Krug, for that, for laying out the political commitment. When we move, I just want to follow up with you. Then, when we move to the new decade of action, do you see the inclusion of speed management to be included there, given its extent? How can we ensure that this is the core part of new of action? In particular, I really like the way how moving to public transport, to active transport, and avoiding, car-based being important, because that also is actually a way to decarbonize the transport system and reducing greenhouse gas emission. So whatever we do in road safety actually has quite a lot of synergies with other sectors, which we can discuss later. But just on the speed management, how you would see it being included, and how can we ensure to be included on the second decade of action?
Indeed, if we reduce speed and if we move to more active and healthy modes of transport, we will reduce emissions, we will reduce noise, we will have more opportunities to move, which is much healthier in terms of prevention of cancer, cardiovascular disease. So yes, there's a lot of additional benefits. And to do that, we need to tackle speed. So speed is a central element of the new plan that has been developed for the decade of action, which, by the way, is on the web right now for the whole month of May for an open consultation process for all member states, UN agencies, civil society organizations to comment on. But speed is already included and it's central. Addressing speed, it's probably very important to mention that addressing speed, of course, requires good road safety legislation and enforcement and information to the public. But it's not only about that. It is also about modifying infrastructure, making sure that the infrastructure is built. And that's very important, of course, for the World Bank to keep in mind. And I'm sure Susanna will talk about that too. But make sure that infrastructure is built so that speeding is simply not possible. We know how to build a road these days so that you can't speed anymore. And we also know how to make sure that there are sidewalks, bicycle lanes, elevated, separated, so that people can walk and cycle safely. It's also about vehicles and make sure that vehicles cannot speed too much. The technology is there now so that, we call also on vehicle manufacturers to play their role. So all in all, yes, it is definitely part of the new decade of action. And more than that, it's a central element of the new plan.
Okay, great. That's really great to hear that we have it front and center in the second decade of action. Okay, now let's move to our second panelist, Mr. John Todd. Welcome, Mr. Todd. I think you've been really a great leader on road safety globally. It's really delightful to have you here. So I wanted to ask you, actually, what expectations are look to implementing and achieving the goals of the second decade of action. You heard Mr. Krug laying out what that includes. It will be great to hear from you what your expectations are and what do you consider are the main principles in which decision makers and key stakeholders should be focusing their time, energy, and limited resources in achieving the decade of action. Over to you, Mr. Todd.
Thank you very much, and happy to be sharing this important World Bank meeting with my colleague during this UN Road Safety Week. And I thank the World Bank Global Road Safety Facility for bringing us all together. Road safety needs a concerted effort from all stakeholders around the world. While we made gains in the first decade of action, as Etienne reminded a while ago, my expectation is to have even greater gains in the second decade by addressing disparity and gaps. In what areas could we do better? We know that 90% of our fatalities and injuries occur in low and middle income countries. Therefore, with our limited resources and time, we must focus on providing support to those most affected communities. This will be essential to drive us to reach our goals in the second decade. Financing platforms like the UN Road Safety Fund and Global Road Safety Facility are key mechanisms to provide this type of support. We know that we do not place enough value on all elements of our road transport system. We need to do a better job of engaging and holding the private sector accountable, including vehicle manufacturers, investors in transport and infrastructures, rideshare providers, beverage companies, and so on. All actors have a responsibility in building the safe system that protects every road users, especially the most vulnerable. We know that road safety benefits many sustainable development goals and can be transformative for the environment, healthcare sector, sustainable cities, human rights, amongst others. We must do a better job of showcasing these linkages. This will drive more investments and priority among governments. We also know that achieving the SDG target 3.6 to halve road deaths and injuries can only be reached by achieving SDG 11.2, which is to provide access to safe, sustainable, and affordable transport to all by 2030. And for this, I must stress the importance of increasing access to safe public transit, which also delivers on our climate goals.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Todd, for the very sharp way you really articulated the linkages between improving speed, road safety, and the wider development goals for environment, for sustainable cities, human capital. That is good in that respect. So thank you. So now let's move to Ms. Susanna Zamataro from IRF. You're a very important stake, obviously, Mr. Mata, for this repeat. So I wanted to really understand from your point of view, what do you see as some of the key challenges or missed opportunities from the first decade of action, especially regarding this speed issue we're discussing today? And what are some of the lessons from this? What did we really miss in the first decade of action that we could have done better in making sure our roads have the appropriate speed and are safe?
Thank you very much, and I hope you can all hear me well. Yes. Thank you for having me this afternoon, and thanks to the GRSF for organizing this panel and giving me the opportunity as well to share the floor with the stage with such passionate leaders when it comes to road safety. I would like to start answering your question most probably by underlining, first of all, the tremendous achievements made during the first decade of action in terms of building the body of knowledge around road safety and around the key risk factors such as speed. We have today robust research findings providing us strong evidence and recommendation for a system of safe speed limits for the different type of road environments. And I hope we'll have a chance later on in the conversation to come back to this. Yet, although all the benefits are scientifically proved, no low-income countries today and only 3% of middle-income countries have 30 kilometers per hour or less speed limit for urban roads. And of course, that tells us that there's so much work that we still need to do. Campaigns like the one we are currently experimenting this week, the ongoing Streets for Life and the Law of 30 campaign help tremendously, I have to say, in changing that narrative around speed, which often is a very political debate, to the extent that it becomes a religious debate almost. And in general, change the way we talk about road safety. And it's exactly what the previous decade of action has been trying to do very hard. And through the concept and this whole concept of the safe system approach, building the understanding that road safety is a shared responsibility, as some of the previous speakers have mentioned. So even when you just look at speed, whether you are a driver or you're a policymaker or law enforcement agent or a road designer, your responsibility does not increase or decrease accordingly. Another key lessons learned is that speed management really relies on a coordinated and I would say multi-sectoral efforts that, as Etienne was saying, involves infrastructure planning and design, the legislation and traffic policy, the vehicle safety standards, as well as a combination at the same time of public awareness and deterrent based on, for example, on automated enforcement. And one of the key recommendations that we got from the Stockholm Ministerial and the declaration was that, of course, managing speed to safe levels must be a priority in the next decade, but also address it, as it has been said, in a very holistic manner. And this is especially important for low and middle income countries where we know that there is in general insufficient road safety management capacity or low capacity for speed enforcement, for vehicle safety standards, for fleet monitoring and public awareness. And we can only really attain impressive results when these interventions come all together and are combined and made possible by as well appropriate levels of human and financial resource. Concluding in terms of missed opportunities, which was initially your probably question, I would say that if two things come to my mind. One, it was probably the importance to engage youth and the private sector. It was only towards the end of the decade of action that we have seen growing attention two, and also space, I would say, being made for these two fundamental stakeholders. And the potential of the contribution of the private sector to road safety, including, of course, on this specific issue of speed, still remains largely untapped today. And I hope we'll have a chance to come back later to this during the debate.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Susanna. That's great. Really showing a good missed opportunity engaging with the private sector and the youth is a key one. This is why I think in the second decade of action, moving forward, engaging the private sector in different circumstances, including the financing platform John Todd mentioned, would be key. And the multi-sectoral aspect is also really important. Okay, now I'd like to now bring in Mr. Hart Schaefer, our Vice President for South Asia, and asking him what we've been doing, especially in the South Asia region. We've been doing quite a number of activities over the several years, and perhaps if you can maybe give us a little bit of a flavor of what we've been doing in terms of policies, interventions related to road safety management. Hart, over to you, please.
Thank you, Benyam, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all colleagues and friends who are part of this important event. And thanks for inviting me to this UN Global Safety Week, Road Safety Week event. For South Asia, road safety is a key issue. South Asia accounts for 10% of the global vehicle fleet, but for 25% of all road crash deaths. So it is a development issue because road crashes hit the most vulnerable segments of the society, very often cyclists, pedestrians, in low income and poor communities. And so we are making that a priority. But when we think of South Asia at this time, of course, our thoughts are with the people of South Asia who are grappling with a devastating second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. What the pandemic has shown is a clear link between road safety and overall management of health and public health systems. Because road crashes, clearly the injuries are taking away scarce capacity that is now needed for the people to be treated for COVID-19. So if we improve road safety, then we are actually freeing up resources when the next pandemic is going to hit. State-of-the-art emergency care services are good for resilience against the pandemic, but they're also very important to help with trauma victims after road crashes. And one of our latest reports on traffic crash injuries and disabilities in India have shown that one of the key factors that we need to, or key gaps we need to address is access to medical treatment and safety nets for most crash victims. So the first hour after a crash, we all call the golden hour, that can save life, can make a difference between remaining alive or being part of the statistics. What is encouraging is that countries in South Asia are recognizing that. And I want to give you an example of what I see as a game changer. And Etienne alluded to it. We need to get to the highest political level with this. It is not just something that is in the transport sector. It is an issue that is important for everybody in the political cabinet, in the government. And 2.5 years ago, when we had our annual meetings, I had asked for a 2-pager that I was showing to every one of the ministers of finance, and I was telling them how much they were actually losing in terms of GDP. And we know the number is anywhere between 3 and 5% of GDP loss because of lack of road safety or because of road death and injuries. And I think that gets the attention of the ministers of finance. And what we have seen in subsequent to that is that they are pulling together cross-cabinet working groups, commissions. We have seen that together when I was with my friend Jean Todt, when we visited Bangladesh and Nepal. There, the Ministry of Transport, but it also included the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Interior, and Police, because they all have a stake in this. And I think this cross-sectoral approach is absolutely critical, and it shows results. If we look at Tamil Nadu, for instance, Tamil Nadu was able to reduce fatalities by 25% in only 3 years. And it was because they invested in trauma care centers, they invested in speed enforcement systems, and they brought all the stakeholders together to own this challenge. Similar efforts are going on in India and in Bangladesh. Both have recently adopted landmark reforms and legislation to address road safety and transport management. And we are also looking in engaging in Sri Lanka and Pakistan to build better institutions and to manage road safety not only at the federal level, but also at the state or the provincial level, which is very important. In countries with the federal system, we need to address it at the federal, the state, and the municipal level. And I think on the municipal level, we'll talk about that in a little while. What is important here is, and I'm very proud of this, that we are working as the World Bank very closely with the UN family in country, but also at the corporate level. That is important for the advocacy, and it helps us to bring together our joint power and efforts and comparative advantage to address this everywhere from enforcement, capacity building, to infrastructure investments, and to institution building. So with that, let me finish this first question, but I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Thank you, Hart, for your passion and for your support. It's really encouraging to hear that the bank has been at the forefront of addressing the road safety problem in South Asia, and to actually see the example you gave about Tamil Nadu. I also really like the evidence that you presented to the finance ministers. Really, this evidence policy dialogue is what is really important, to show them what is the cost in an economic terms, because that's what we really understand, our finance ministers in many countries. So to get them to buy into this, to get a cross-sector cabinet, multi-sector intervention is really important. And you're showing us that this and that could be replicated in other countries around the world. So this is really great. Okay, so moving on. So now let's talk about, Harti mentioned about COVID in South Asia and India in particular, in Nepal. Of course, our thoughts are there with our colleagues, friends, and all the people with really this devastating COVID that they're going through. So there are also the rebuilding kind of thinking now, hopefully in a post-COVID world. Hopefully it will come soon to our developing countries, to South Asia. But I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion as we enter a kind of a post-COVID world, how we will see road to be integrated into kind of a green recovery that many countries will take. I'm going to ask John Todd first on this question, especially as it relates to how we will move forward, how you see we can make. So, as you would remember, John, we had this third global ministerial meeting in Stockholm that actually was creating quite a lot of momentum about road safety, about speed management. Now this was, of course, countries now get diverted in focusing COVID-19 pandemic. But how do you see we can actually then continue to create this awareness and momentum with all the stakeholders about road safety, even while we are in COVID context or as we enter the post-COVID world? Over to you, Mr. Todd.
Thank you for that. In terms of the question about COVID-19 overshadowing our work in road safety, I will challenge us to instead focus on how it has provided new opportunities to achieve our global goals. It has forced us to be agile and responsive. And I would like to highlight three reflections to support this. First, the world continued to rely on mobility during the pandemic, which means the importance of road safety was always there. 40 months ago, when curfews and lockdown were being imposed globally, we were not yet sure how COVID-19 pandemic would affect road safety and transport. Today, we see how the pandemic has had a significant impact on the world's mobility sector. Restrictions have resulted in everyone moving far less than previously, and about public transport and mass transit was hit the hardest. But we have also seen that even during a global health crisis, the world continued to rely on mobility. The movement of essential workers, transport of food and goods, delivery services, dissemination of vaccines, and humanitarian and emergency relief services have only been possible with a safe, reliable, and connected transport. Those in the poorer places, which were also hard hit by the virus, have not shared our privilege to stay at home. It makes road safety more relevant than ever. Second, some of the shifts in mobility patterns and new street design as a result of COVID-19 response has propelled us closer to some targets, especially in greener and more active mobility. Because of the change in landscape as a result of COVID-19 response, we have seen many policymakers, especially in cities, review their street design, their road safety policies, and modified their mobility system. For example, many cities redesigned streets to increase cycling, walking, and pedestrian access. This supported safer mobility and concurrently prevented the spread of the virus. What COVID-19 has shown us is the importance of an integrated approach for making cities more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive. If we can position road safety effectively, we can access the crisis stimulus packages that are supporting the green transition, as well as expansion of sustainable infrastructure and transport. Additionally, with the change in demand and use of transport, COVID-19 has also pushed us to integrate more digital technology to deliver new needs and routes. It has also given a bigger role to automation. Going forward, mobility operators across the sector will need a strong ability to forecast demand and adjust route planning and staffing in response, becoming more digital, more collaborative, and more innovative, and continuing to transform the transport sector for the better. Third and last, we have seen the commonality between the pandemic and the road safety in both their effects on the most vulnerable. We should draw on this as we reposition our effort during COVID-19 recovery. The most vulnerable people are the ones who are most impacted when a crisis hits. COVID-19 response and achieving road safety will benefit the most vulnerable. It is the spirit of social inclusion that we should rebuild better on both fronts. Furthermore, access to safe mobility helps the most vulnerable access to decent work and education, addresses the gender equality in access to mobility, and it also helps us rebuild for more sustainable cities and communities. The effort to address speed is also covered.
Great. Wow, that was a really good, Mr. Todd. I see you see also opportunity basically in the COVID crisis. It's interesting. The word crisis in the Chinese language has two characters. It's called Weiji. It means the first character says it's danger, and the second character is an opportunity. So in any crisis, you have danger, opportunity. So I think we have to really seize this momentum, this green stimulus, green recovery, to position road safety as a key development issue that can actually has a much more impact. That was really great. Now I'm going to bring Mamta Murthy, our Vice President for Human Development, to speak a little bit about the human development dimension of the COVID-19 and road safety issue. So, Mamta, you know that over 60 million deaths have now occurred globally since the first fatal road crash occurred some more than a century ago, which are speed related. We expect a further 25% increase on on this number over the next decade if concrete actions are not taken. In the public health world, this has been considered a silent pandemic since 2004. COVID was recognized as a pandemic early last year and has seen a massive and rapid mobilization of governments and private sector to address this issue. What lessons should we take from COVID-19 response when comparing these two public health pandemics? How can we kind of a silent pandemic and how we can get a massive response that this over time?
Thank you, Ben, and hello to everyone who's on this call. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Let me say three things in response to your question. First of all, we need to acknowledge the massive casualties that occur because of lack of road safety. I believe when I was looking at these numbers last night, it's 1.5 million deaths a year and 50 million accidents a year. So this is no small number. This is staggering. And while we are focused on deaths, both in the case of road safety and in the case of COVID-19, I think we also need to think about the lingering effects on people and on their quality of life, both the survivors of road accidents and the survivors of COVID. So without a doubt, this is a big issue, and all of us at this point know somebody who has been touched by a road accident or touched by COVID. And it prompts us to think about what we can learn from one pandemic for the other issue of road safety. Let me focus not on the multiple aspects that everyone has spoken about eloquently. Let me focus on behavior change as a very important element which we have learned about through COVID-19 and which is relevant for road safety. We know from COVID-19 that there is a lot of vaccine hesitancy. This is true the world over. Now, developing countries are at the moment not receiving enough vaccines. But we do know from surveys that even if they were to receive vaccines, there is significant vaccine hesitancy. A large number of people, when asked if they will take a vaccine in a developing country, say they won't, or they say they are unsure. And in fact, there are more people who are unsure than people who say no. But we also know that successful information campaigns, information from people who are influential, they could be community leaders, they could be religious leaders, they could be pop stars, they could be sportsmen. We know that this has an impact on the receptivity of the population towards the message. And here is one lesson that I think does carry over from the pandemic to road safety. Receiving information, receiving the nudge that is required to make the change, that's required to make the change about reducing speed, about wearing a helmet, about looking carefully when you cross a road. All of this can have an impact on how people conduct themselves on a road, and this can impact road safety. Finally, let me be a bit contrarian and depart from the analogy of the pandemic. The pandemic is COVID-19 is an infectious disease. It came upon us suddenly. It has spread rapidly, caused massive death and desolation. But I would like to make an analogy with chronic disease. I think that's much more relevant to road safety. Chronic disease is about how we behave on a day-to-day basis. Do we eat well? Do we exercise? Do we cut back on smoking? Do we engage in fewer risky behaviors from a health standpoint? And this is where I think, this I feel is a more appropriate analogy to road safety. Because just like in daily life, we think we underestimate the risk of not getting exercise, or we underestimate the risk of poor nutrition, or we think, what will one additional cigarette do? Similarly, we underestimate the risk of high speeds. What will one additional kilometer per hour by way of speeding do? And yet we saw this excellent evidence presented earlier about the impact of speeding. Or what will not wearing a helmet as I ride my motorcycle today do? So I think there is a lot that can be learned from the way chronic disease is managed. We know that giving people information, nudging them towards better behavior, fiscal and other government policies such as taxing cigarettes or taxing sugary drinks, other forms of community engagement can affect behavior. And this, I feel, is a very useful analogy that could be transferred over to road safety, helping people engage in the right kinds of behaviors that make roads safer for pedestrians and for people who are using other forms of transport. We actually did a very interesting report on this. It's called The High Toll of Traffic Injuries, where we identified a number of best buys in road safety. These are interventions that deliver a return very quickly in terms of reduced fatality and reduced injury, and they also cost very little. So my sense is that we want to learn from the management of chronic disease. We want to learn from that and take forward some of these investments that we have identified in our publication on the high toll of traffic injuries.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mamta. I think this is great. I think you've given us a really good food for thought, especially focusing on behavior and nudging people to adapt better, road safety behavior, if you will, sort of like better lifestyle. So I think we will need to bring in a number of behavioral economists really to think in terms of when we design road safety interventions and how we can nudge people towards a better lifestyle. I thought that's a very nice way of articulating this issue. Okay, great, thank you. Let's now try to move ahead fast. We started late, so we do need to make up some time now. So I'm going to bring back again Hart Schaefer to discussion, and then what you mentioned briefly about cities and municipalities in your first intervention. So I wanted to ask you that, so we're seeing cities being reshaped in terms of traffic patterns because of the pandemic. Travel behavior is changing, land use is also changing. People want to live in the suburb, or people want to drive solo instead of public transport. So how relevant is speed management for cities in the context of building back better as we recover from the pandemic crisis? So how should cities now follow you? What do you see here, please?
Well, the pandemic crisis really brought the focus on the future of transport, of mobility and road safety in general. If we look at the height of the pandemic crisis, the absolute numbers of road incidents was actually going down. But that could have been because there's less traffic and less mobility. Because when we dig deeper and look at the number of fatalities per kilometer traveled, it actually went up. And I think that reflects that streets are empty. Naturally, speeding is going to increase, and with increased speeding, you have more severe accidents and incidents. And there is a larger proportion of the population that is actually using roads as pedestrians, as cyclists, and so on. So when we look at how we come out of this pandemic and we build back better, clearly we need to take those trends into account. And I think the public will be more cautious in using public transport, using cars, and there will be a preference for walking and cycling. And naturally, that means we need to rethink our transportation system. We need to rethink urban mobility as a system itself. And it needs to be less of a car-centric approach, as Etienne was saying earlier. And it needs to put low-speed streets in place, streets that are safe for the different user groups. And that requires that urban mobility will have to provide dedicated lanes for pedestrians and cyclists that are safe and ensure mobility across cities. And we see some of those initiatives actually being launched already. In India, we have the Smart City mission that was recently launched. India, it's the title India Cycles for Change Challenge, and it is supporting 11 cities where they are piloting walking and cycling alongside with motorized traffic. We, as development partners, can help by making sure that part of our project finance is actually going into those investments that are not just the tarmac that gets the road in, but traffic calming investments, making sure that there are safe lanes for pedestrians and cyclists, that there are footpaths. And we can also help with policy because it requires a revision of the urban mobility policies. And lastly, we can help with building capacity because that's a paradigm change. And we need to make sure that those who are in charge of those policies and investments actually learn from best practice. And as a global institution like the UN, like the World Bank, we can bring global expertise, whether it is from Barcelona or from other cities, to countries like India or Bangladesh. And I think this is something for us. We are saying we are going to follow a grid approach in the recovery of from the pandemic, greener, more resilient, more inclusive development, and road safety is absolutely integral to that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hart, for that. Okay, so let's move now to the third topic for our discussion. This is linking development agenda, attaining synergies among different practices and sectors. I'm going to start, go back again to Mamta, our Vice President for Human Development. So let me ask you, Martha, in your role as the Vice President for Human Development at the World Bank, you oversee a range of agendas, including education, health, gender, social protection and jobs, as well as capital project. How do you see this development agenda items linking to road safety, including the safer speeds issue, and what are the synergies we should be aiming for if we want to achieve sustainable improvement in people's life, gender equality, and economic growth? Please, Mamta.
Thank you, Ben. Let me begin by saying that in human development, we believe in putting people at the center of development and supporting programs that allow people to access public services so that they can invest in themselves and have greater opportunities. I would see transport as a key enabler that allows people to access services like health, like education. It allows people to access jobs. It's both a key enabler, both transport and safe transport are both a key enabler and a key equalizer, because this kind of access is essential if we want to reduce disparities between people living in different geographical areas, or people of different genders, or people of different abilities, or ages, or income levels. So having safe transport, safe, affordable, accessible transport is essential to human opportunity and human development. Now, I have an image in my mind about what this looks like, and let me just give two quick examples too. So if I'm thinking about a rural area, I immediately think about roads, preferably all-weather roads that can get kids to school. There needs to be some sort of shoulder or something next to the road so that kids can walk safely. There needs to be some rules and regulations so that the different forms of transport that are using the road do so in a way that kids remain safe. And very importantly, girls need to be able to get to school and return from school safely. So that's what I would see as a safe and accessible transport supporting human development in a rural area. If I think of an urban area, the image in my mind is slightly different. I'm thinking about a dense concentration of informal activity, of shops, of restaurants, of offices, of warehouses. People need to be able to reach these places of work. Pedestrians who are walking need to be safe. Different modes of transport need to be accommodated. public transport should be available. The public transport should be driven or run by drivers who are safe. The bus stops, the train stops need to be safe, well lit. Women need to be able to go to and from work safely. So that's the image that I have in mind. So while it may differ from a rural to an urban area, while it might differ in terms of the kinds of economic activity that is supported, in the end, it's about transport that is an enabler and an equalizer for people to access services and reach jobs. Okay, wonderful. If I just ask you to continue briefly on the Human Development Agenda, if there are any principles or lessons that you think are transferable from what we see in the Human Development Agenda to improving road safety outcomes. For instance, is there transferable experience from various types of engagements, from ministerial level to local community engagement? Just maybe perhaps if you can say a little bit briefly on that. So let me say that I believe there are two things that have been very successful in the Human Capital Project in raising the importance of investing in people. Two lessons which I think are transferable to the road safety agenda. The first lesson is the need to quantify the impact of investments on both the quality of life of people and on economic growth. We've been able to do this using the Human Capital Index, which was introduced in 2018. And this really quantifies the impact of investments in education or healthcare or safety nets on opportunities for people and on economic growth. I believe something similar, I mean, just like Hart was talking about earlier, as he did in the case of South Asia, I think quantifying the impact of investments in road safety on other outcomes, whether it's jobs or inequality or growth, is very important to making the case for road safety investments. The second point I would make is the multi-sector point, and I think Susanna made it, and Hart and Etienne and others made it. We know that human development depends on many things. I just talked about how accessing schools through transport is extremely important. So what we did in the Human Capital Project is that we proposed a whole of government approach. There's a focal point in government, whether that's at the federal level or at the community level. And this focal point is able to pull together the different parts of government that are needed to have an impact on a particular outcome of interest. In the case of the Human Capital Project, these are human capital focal points, and they work with ministries of finance, education, transport, etc., to help devise a program that the World Bank and other agencies in partnership can support in order to improve human development outcomes in country. So something like this, I think, would be very helpful for road safety because of its cross-sectoral nature. Hart earlier gave the example of the state of Tamil Nadu, which has been very successful in India in bringing down road fatalities quite sharply. And one of the things that the government of Tamil Nadu did is they had a cross-sector task force to help with this activity. So these are the two lessons that I think would transfer over from the Human Capital Project to road safety. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Manta. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left in our allotted time. So I really will have to move fast. Maybe I'll skip some questions and go on the knowledge and technology issue. I'd like to bring back John Todd for this question. So, Mr. Todd, you have previously spoken about motorsport as a development laboratory to advance on and make motoring safer. In regards to this speed issue, what transferable lessons in technology are there to learn from, and what other emerging mechanisms, systems, technologies would you like to see in the vehicles we see on our streets, particularly in low middle income countries, or part of our broader system response to this issue? Please.
I believe that motorsport is an example on effective use of the safe system approach. We have been able to achieve this because motorsport provides one of the most heavily funded platforms for automotive research. Its competitive environment results in accelerated innovation and technological development towards road safety. For example, the motorsport world, particularly Formula One, shows that speed can be controlled and managed. During the opening lap of the last year Bahrain Grand Prix, you may remember the Romain Grosjean crash when he lost control of his car, traveling at 240 kilometers an hour, and when he hit the guardrail barrier at 190 kilometers an hour, snapping his car into two. And we all have seen those terrible images. What have saved Romain Grosjean? Years of research by the FIA safety department, resulting in the development of the latest protecting equipment, like helmets, driver's overalls, forward head and neck restraints, fire-resistant underwear, gloves, improved vehicle design like the Halo, FIA crash test survival cells, cockpit padding, advanced infrastructure material for absorbing the energy of an impact, and the complete absence of any other road users and specific design circuits. In addition, the prompt response of the rescue team, as well as the mental and physical agility of a trained professional driver to take decisions in a fraction of a second. All these elements combined, making up a safe system, protects the road users who make a mistake. Even after the crash has occurred in motorsport, including in the cases with no severe consequences for the driver, investigations take place. It helps us learn more and reduce potential risk for similar situations in the future. So what we saw in Bahrain will not happen again. And when we see the investigation of Romain Grosjean getting into data and getting also into accident data recorder, we can see the speed and the forces on the car and the in-ear accelerometer that are fitted inside a driver's ear to measure the movement of his head in a crash. It is what we call a safe system approach. It is a culture of safety embedded into competition, and I believe this is the most important lesson motorsport can bring to everyday mobility as a laboratory. Most of the cars in operation in many parts of the world do not meet minimum recommended UN safety standard that we all well know. If the same volume of production that had occurred since 2010 is repeated in the next decade, about another 900 million new automobiles will be added to the global fleet by 2030. The majority will be produced and sold in middle-income countries. We need these cars to be fitted with the UN's list of recommended safety standards, including front and side impact, pedestrian protection, and electronic stability control. In the new decade, what we need the most is a culture of safety.
Okay, wow, wonderful. Thank you, John, on that. Well, it's really, the time is really over. If there is 1 or 2 minutes, I'd like to maybe ask Susanna to briefly talk about technology aspects for safety, especially technology and artificial intelligence trend, and how you see the big data aspects in improving road safety. And also maybe to Etienne Crook from WHO, if you can also tell us a little bit the knowledge that we have and the tools that we have in moving this agenda forward. In particular, are we ready? Are we fully equipped to move, to bring it all together? So without both of you, and then we'll conclude. Thanks for keeping you a couple more minutes later than we have scheduled. We started late, actually. Susanna, first.
Thank you very much, Bin. And maybe in the interest of time, allow me to divert from your question. Actually, I'm going to answer to your question in one sentence, and just by saying that indeed, big data, artificial intelligence, and technology in general will be the greatest allies we have going forward, and we should stop thinking about technology and artificial intelligence and big data as being at the same time something that is very far away from low and middle income countries' realities. Actually, the bank has been doing fantastic work on how using those tools to harvest those type of data that we need to make informed decision. Very quickly, I want to come back, and that's why I'm dissenting from your question, come back to the issue of the private sector. We as IRF have been working very hard with the private sector, trying to illustrate really those areas where the areas of opportunities where companies can make meaningful contribution to road safety outcomes and also inspire action within the sector. We're doing that even more proactively than that. We're working on building private sector coalitions in different countries around the world, and there will be an announcement going on Friday, I believe. We need to learn to better harness the power of corporate resources and the presence in the communities, as it was said by others. And one final quick point. Imagine for a moment the level of impact and the transformational change we could have if we were able to scale up in the sector those good examples which exist and are set by some leading companies today throughout their supply chain and largely in the sector, via, for example, an industry code of conduct, which would be backed up at the same time by robust knowledge and expertise sharing. If you couple that with policy and regulatory interventions, you actually have a winning recipe. And that's exactly where those partnerships in between the public and the private sector are so important. And we can also start from local communities, in fact, as Hart was mentioning, and then build it up through the national level. Thank you.
Great, that's wonderful. You actually also addressed one of the key questions we were asked from the participants. Okay, Tini, so if you could sum it up for us in terms of whether we have the knowledge and tools to move forward on this, and or what we need more. Tini. Okay, I don't know whether he is still with us. Maybe Hart, then I can give you the Lord to sum it up for us. Also, maybe if you see there are technologies and what you heard, just that you think from the World Bank perspective.
No, I think this has been a very rich discussion. I really want to thank all the panelists. So for me, when I look at low-speed streets, it has at least a triple win. It's healthier and safer. That's important because it keeps us safe, clearly. Second, it's greener. It helps us to actually get better air quality in urban centers where we need it most. And it is better for social, cultural, and economic development. If you're sitting in the car, you're going through. If you're walking as a pedestrian or cyclist, you may go to the shops and so on. So it helps businesses. It revitalizes inner cities. And I think this is the way to go. We see that in the developed world happening when we look at Barcelona as an example. I mentioned that earlier. I think we can do it in the developing world. So I look forward to continuing on addressing road safety in a very strong partnership with the UN, with the FIA Foundation, Bloomberg Philanthropy, IRF, and so on. Thank you very much for this interesting discussion.
Great, thank you, Hart. This has been indeed a very rich discussion, very insightful, very collaborative. We've had quite a lot of activities and questions from participants. Our team has been also responding to them. I think many of you have already covered a lot of them. Let me just thank again the panelists, Etienne Krug, John Todd, Manta Murthy, Susanna Zamatro, Hart Schaefer. Thank you all. And thank you also for Alina and Radek, and for Pablo for opening this important webinar. And I would also like to invite you all to come for the next session that we have upcoming on the speed management guidebook that's going to be launched. Okay, so this will bring it to a close, our session, and I wish you all a good day, good, safe, good day, and we will continue the discussion. We will reconnect in the future. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.